У нас, у нас будет доклад Iliyana Krapovой, Balkan Complementizers, Structure and Variation. You are welcome, please.
Thank you very much. Let me first say that I am particularly happy to be part of this conference, which is dedicated to Andrei Sobolev, to his 60th birthday, a scholar whom I respect very much for his seminal work in Balkan linguistics in many fields of Balkan linguistics. I will be talking about complementizers in 3 Balkan languages, and I will talk about some meaningful differences between these complementizers and about the variation that is exhibited. So my idea is to concentrate, because this is a huge topic, Balkan complementizer, so I will concentrate on the phenomenon of factivity, and I will explain in a moment what I mean by factivity in 3 standard Balkan languages, modern Greek, Bulgarian, and Serbian. I will propose a tripartite distinction within the complementizer system, distinguishing between declarative, factives, and subjunctives. And I will discuss the distribution of some specialized factive complementizers that are present in these 3 languages, and also discuss a micro variation patterns. So I would like to end up with an overview, comparative overview of complementizer selection in these 3 languages according to predicate types. Now, factivity is central in complementation theory since the seminal work by Kiparsky and Kiparsky back in the 70s, who in a very long and interesting article argued that there are some factive predicates like regret, be sorry, be happy, mostly emotive predicates, which introduce so-called presuppositions. And this notion of presupposition has been further identified and explained by Kartunen back in the 70s. And according to Kartunen, and this is very much the standard view until now, the truth of the embedded clause of these factive predicates is taken for granted by discourse participants. Now, Kiparsky and Kiparsky distinguished factive from non-factive predicates like think or believe, which introduce not presuppositions but rather assertions potentially deniable by the interlocutor. So factivity denotes the relation, to say it in broad terms, a relation between a sentence, main matrix sentence containing a factive verb, and the truth of the embedded proposition. Factive predicates are special because with these predicates, the content of the complement clause cannot be contradicted, so it is assumed to be true. And in one, I give an illustration from Bulgarian. So Иван съжалява, че Мария е заминала за чужбина, cannot be contradicted by the interlocutor. So he or she cannot say, but in fact she's still in Bulgaria. So this characterizes factive predicates and opposes them to non-factive predicates, like for example in to. So if I say Иван мисли, че Мария е заминала за чужбина, I can contradict saying, but in fact she is still in Bulgaria. Now, how can we diagnose whether we have a factivity presupposition? And this, again, is due to Kiparsky and Kiparsky, who actually offered several tests to distinguish this. And these tests are illustrated in 3, again, from Bulgarian. So if I convert a declarative sentence into a question, or if I negate this sentence, or if I add a possibility model like we see in 3, these so-called non-veridical operators do not affect the truth value of the embedded sentence. So if I say, do you regret that Mary went abroad? And John doesn't regret that Mary went abroad, or maybe he regrets, there is always the presupposition that Mary went abroad. So the embedded clause must necessarily be assumed to be true by all discourse participants. Now, let us see how the various predicates differ. So we have first communication and attitude predicates like say, claim, believe, think, etc. And these do not induce a presuppositional embedded clause because they introduce an assertion and not a presupposition. And this assertion adds new information, and the speaker proposes to add this new information contained in the embedded clause to the so-called common ground, which is a quite stable notion following work by Stalnaker back in the 70s. So these verbs oppose or are in contrast to the factive verbs, which introduce presuppositions, like I said, and the presupposition is generally considered to be part of the shared information, that is information which is part of the common ground shared by the discourse participants. So it is taken for granted. Now, going to the Balkan languages, to the three Balkan languages that I am investigating, we can distinguish between declaratives, and these are the non-factives, non-factive verbs, which require a complementizer like Bulgarian che, Serbian da, or modern Greek oti. So these, like I said, introduce assertions, and an example is given from modern Greek, nomizo oti efige noris. Balkan languages are also well known to possess a separate tier of complementizers, and which some people argue are not complementizers, just modal particles, but this is irrelevant for what I am saying here today. So these are the modal da or na in modern Greek, and these are usually used with irrealis complements, like from modern Greek θέλω να φύγω, I want to leave, or they can also embed under negation or question with some attitude verbs from the first column. So for example, in modern Greek, one can say δεν νομίζω να έφυγε νωρίς. I don't think, but then there is also some interaction with matrix tense, as well as negation is necessary for na, for the na clause to be used. And there is a third tier in Balkan complementizer system. This is the factive tier, which introduce presuppositions with emotive predicates. And we have an example again from modern Greek, lipame pou έφυγε νωρίς. And now you can see that the complementizer actually is different with this kind of verb. Now, what about Bulgarian? Bulgarian is interesting because apart from the opposition between the che, which is the regular declarative complementizer, and the modal complementizer da, there is also the possibility of using a third complementizer with the emotive verb. So in this table, I show that attitude verbs like believe, vярвам, select only the che complementizer, believe that. But again, as much like what we saw from the previous example from modern Greek, if the attitude is negated in Bulgarian, there is also the possibility to use the modal complementizer da, as in не вярвам човек да е господар на съдбата си in the second line. Then volitionals use da and not che, thank you. And the emotives like be glad can use both the declarative and the special complementizer. Now, the indicative subjunctive divide is quite a complex story. I put subjunctive in quotes because not everybody agrees that this is the exact correspondent of a morphological subjunctive in Romance languages. But in general, when we use the subjunctive, not just in Bulgarian, but also in modern Greek, this is meant to reduce the epistemic support of the speaker with respect to the truth of the proposition. So there is no truth, Rather, the speaker is quite uncertain about whether the proposition is true and or not true. Now, in Serbian, it is claimed that there is a single complementizer da, which people say is both used in declarative and also in subjunctive contexts, but work by these people, Progovac, Todorovic, Suchanac, has shown that actually there are two different da in Serbian, one which is the declarative and the other which is modal. Now, let's move to the special factive complementizers in the Balkan languages. So in modern Greek, this is the complementizer pu. The Serbian complementizer is što, and the Bulgarian complementizer is detom. However, these complementizers are in variation, and it depends very much from language to language how they enforce the distinction between a simple declarative and a special factive clause. Now, if we turn to modern Greek, we see that modern Greek actually exhibits quite a strict categorization, with the pu as the only available option after emotives like be annoyed, regret, and this can easily be seen not just in 5, where the regular complementizer oti is prohibited, but it can also be diagnosed using the same tests we used for Bulgarian, namely, if we ask a question, then again pu is obligatory, or if we deny the statement, again pu is obligatory and the presupposition is present. So what about Serbian? Now, Serbian is more complicated than modern Greek, because although there is a high preference for the special complementizer što, as in ona žali što ima tako malo vremena, there is optional alternation between što and da with some emotive, like for example, Marko se radova è possibile both što and da je vidi. And some other emotives like radovati, veseliti allow both of these complementizers. So Serbian actually restricts this factive specialization to only a subset of emotive predicates like poštovati, ceniti, diviti se. And on the other hand, Serbian shows that the complementizer da, the declarative one, is actually spreading into the complementizer, factive complementizer domain, becoming more default. Now, this has an explanation which is given by Grković Major, and she actually shows that što is older, more archaic than da, and I give here examples, but for lack of time, I'm not going to discuss them. So što is a causal, adverbial complementizers expressing a reason for some embedded action. Then it became za što, from zato, što, for this, that, it further condensed into za što, which is used as causal conjunction, and the example is from the 19th century, but from the end of the 18th century already she notices that da is spreading and is becoming more popular, so to speak. Now, Bulgarian exemplifies quite a conservative system. We said that there are two possibilities, and that, much like Serbian, što is historically causal. It is a relative complementizer, but is now used with very few verbs. So, for example, with jadosvam se, get angry, it is possible to use it, but it is also possible to use the regular complementizer. So, for example, some corpus data from the Bulgarian National Corpus found only 3 hits with deto as opposed to 26 hits with che, with the same verb be angry. So one can say that che has almost fully replaced deto in both the literary language and also in colloquial speech, where deto has been shown by many scholars to be extremely productive as an invariant relativizer, but also as a factive complementizer. Now, not all factives behave alike, and I am going here to skip this slide because Hooper and Thompson Johnson actually distinguished between emotive factives and cognitive factives, like know, realize, which sometimes lose the presupposition under particular contextual environments, as we see in 9. So the keys were not in the drawer, but she knew that they were, so she foolishly kept on searching to show that in the embedded clause there is no presupposition of truth, and actually the embedded clause contradicts this presupposition. Now there is a lot of variation with respect to these predicates. So for example, modern Greek allows some emotives but also some cognitive factives like remember to appear with both oti and pu, with however different readings. Wherever this alternation is available, the pu reading always induces a true content, while the oti regular complementizer actually is non-factive, and it leaves the truth value of the embedded clause open. Now, there is also alternation, as we saw in Serbian. So, for example, with brine, boji se, it is possible to use both što, as in 12, worries because, or that she spends all day in the sun. And in 13, we see the same verb which is used with the complementizer da. So da has somewhat weaker modal reading, but što has a stronger reading. But we see that sometimes this distinction is blurred in the language. Now, Bulgarian uses the dato complementizer in very few environments currently, especially after verbs remember, but remember only when it is put in focus in the main clause. So, for example, pomniš li deto ti spomenah? Do you remember that I mentioned you about my friend Doni? And a similar situation is found in Greek. So we see a continuum of strictness in terms of maintaining the declarative factive distinction. Modern Greek exemplifies the strictest end of the spectrum. So pu is only possible with emotives, though with some cognitive switch, so it is actually giving way to oti. And the Serbian represents the intermediate case, with što preserved whenever the emotive predicate is associated more with a causal and thus factive meaning, and da is actually replacing it even in these causal environments. So this is a very maybe naive diagram showing how the three different languages actually behave. So Greek, the strictest, Serbian, a kind of more conservative, but not quite, and Bulgarian, which has entirely turned to a general, to the use of a general complementizer. Now, this actually shows us that Balkan languages converge in exploiting these pu, što, deto, these conjunctions, which are also used as relativizers in relative clauses, and they have extended these relativizers into factive complementation. And so apparently there is a division of labor in this Balkan complementizer system, distinguishing between declarative, subjunctive, and factive. However, there is a tendency to increase the functional load of the declarative complementizer, especially in Balkan Slavic, at the expense of the factive ones. Thank you.
Thank you very much for very interesting talk. Александр Юрьевич, у вас, наверное, вопрос.
Yes, it is not the question, but rather the commentary. Thank you very much for your very interesting paper. I should add that the similar triple distinction we have also in Albanian,
Yes,
where we have
Yes.
te with subjunctive, che with mostly with factive verbs, and se with declarative words. But in Albanian it is rather statistical tendency that maybe it is more near Bulgarian than Greek, but it should be, but it needs further study. Thank you very much.
Yes, of course. There are a lot of studies needed. First, a better quantitative analysis of the data, because these were just preliminary observations, and also a better study of the differences of the semantic makeup of each factive predicate in order to understand better why in some cases the factive complementizer is allowed, while in other cases it can alternate with a non-factive one. Thank you, Alexander. Thank you for the comments.
You're welcome, please.
Здравей, Илияна. Ще кажа
Здравей.
на български да те разбера. Сега на руски ще се приключа. Я глубоко впечатлен вашими достижениями и работами последних лет и месяцев в области балканской грамматики, начиная с вашей книги о месте болгарского языка в европейском языковом ареале. Ваш доклад на съезде славистов, сегодняшний доклад демонстрирует глубочайшие теоретические познания и прекрасное владение очень качественным языковым материалом. Я желаю вам, Илiyana, успехов на этом пути. Дело в том, что развернуть эти темы можно и в ареальном, и в диакратическом аспекте. И, конечно же, мы этого от вас будем ждать. И если будет на то высшая воля, мы очень хотели бы соучаствовать в этой деятельности. Успехов вам!
Спасибо большое. Да.
Thank you very much for very interesting talk and for perfect timing. Thank you very much. Now we have another talk about complementizers, but in a restricted area. It will be a talk by Mirjana and Mirić about complementizers in Gurbet, Romani, Eastern Serbia. You're welcome, please.
Yes, thank you. I hope I can. I hope that you can hear me first, and also that you can see the presentation. Okay, let me start first by thanking the organizers for initiating this lovely event, and also by wishing Andrej Soboljev all the best on my behalf and also on behalf of the colleagues from the Institute of Balkan Studies. As you have heard, the topic of my presentation is complementizers in Gurbet, Romani. And I will first provide some relevant information on Romani and this specific variety that I'm dealing with. First of all, Romani is an Indo-Aryan language. It is spoken by at least 3 to 4 million speakers worldwide, according to the official estimates, and mainly in Europe. It is a heterogeneous language with at least 4 large dialect groups. These are Balkan, Vlah, Central, and Northern. And each dialect has numerous varieties which significantly differ in terms of grammar, but especially in their lexicon, given that Romani is subject to significant contact influences. It is also highly susceptible to borrowing, and these borrowings also include the complementizers. In Serbia, Balkan and Vlah dialects are the dominant ones in terms of the number of speakers and their geographical distribution. And the Gurbet variety that I will present belongs to the Southern Vlah group of Romani dialects. The data that I analyze come from the Gurbet Romani spoken in the town of Knjaževac, which is located in eastern Serbia. In some recent times, this variety was highly influenced by the Romanian language, and also highly influenced by the current contact language, which is Serbian, more specifically the Timok variety, which is spoken in the town of Knjaževac and the area. According to the latest census, Roma constitute approximately 2% of the population in Serbia and nearly 3% of the population in the town of Knjaževac. let me now discuss complementizers. They are typically defined as conjunctions that serve the function of identifying clauses as complements, and they have a range of semantic and pragmatic functions. Among the semantic functions, they may serve to distinguish between factual, that is indicative or truth-valued complements, and the non-factual, that is modal or non-truth-valued complements. So the approach that I'm presenting today regarding the complementizers is not the one that Iliyana just presented. So she was dealing with effectivity, not the dimension of factual versus non-factual. In terms of Balkan perspectives, this distinction between factual and non-factual complementation is lexically marked in the majority of Balkan languages and varieties by the employment of two distinct complementizers. One would be the indicative complementizer, and the other one would be the modal complementizers, or sometimes labeled as dental modal subordinator. And this distinction exists in the majority of Balkan languages. This distinction is also lexically marked in various varieties of the Romani language, and the most widespread complementizers are the non-factual complementizer te and the factual complementizer kai. These are inherited Romani complementizers, which are used alongside some borrowed, mainly factual complementizers. For instance, the complementizer ke that we also attest in Gurbet Romani in Knjaževac is borrowed actually from the Romanian language. Various studies also point towards the optional complementizer omission of the actually non-factual complementizer te. However, this optional omission has not been investigated in the Gurbet Romani. Relevant data on complementizers in Romani come from the so-called ABLA database, namely the Atlas of the Balkan Linguistic Area online, which is one of the projects that me and my colleagues collaborated on together with Andrej Soboljev. This database contains 10 Romani data sets, and one of the data sets is actually the Romani data set from the town of Knjaževac. Our preliminary analysis of all the Romani data sets in this ABLA database in terms of the features concerning the subordinate clauses and complementizers show several very important effects. First of all Romani varieties employ modal complementizer in subordinate clauses, aligning with the pattern which is observed in several other Balkan languages. Also, all Romani varieties in the ABLA database follow the pattern which is typical for Romani dialects in general. Especially the modal complementizer te is found with different verbs selecting for subordinate clauses, and these include verbs of volition, positive and negative ability, obligation, as well as some other predicates. And what we also show in our analysis is that many Romani varieties borrow complementizers from other contact languages. Yesterday we have heard in Tanguy's and Maxim's presentation that, for instance, oti is borrowed from Greek in some Romani varieties, but we also observe that the complementizer ke is borrowed from Romania, also ke from Italian in the variety spoken in Piacenza, and for instance, chi is borrowed from Bulgarian. When it comes to the examples of complementizers in the Gurbet Romani variety, in number 1, we illustrate the use of the non-factual complementizer te in the sentence meaning we aren't allowed to do that, or we may not do that. Nitro mas govate ceras. Here the modal verb tromel, to be allowed to or may, is followed by the finite complementation introduced with the modal complementizer te. In 2, we illustrate the use of the factual complementizer kai in the sentence meaning they think that we really speak German. Von mislin kaj čače nemački pričos. Here, the cognitive verb to think is followed by the finite complementation introduced by the indicative complementizer kai. So I will use these examples also to mention that Romani varieties spoken in the Balkans, regardless of the group to which they belong to, do not employ infinitives, but actually the finite verb in the complement clauses. And also, as the second example illustrates, we find numerous borrowed verbs belonging to different word classes, which are borrowed from Serbian. In 3, we illustrate the use of the borrowed complementizer ke in the sentence meaning my father says that he will give me 4,000, meaning 4,000 dinars. Pendamo datke kad Elma štar milje. In this sentence, the utterance verb to say is followed by the finite complementation introduced by the complementizer ke. And here we see that ke basically substitutes for the complementizer kai, so that is actually an indicative complementizer. In 4, we illustrate the complementizer omission in the sentence meaning I cannot understand you. Menaš ti razumiv tu men. Here the modal verb of the negated ability, naš ti, is followed only by the finite verb, and we see that the complementizer is omitted. In our database, we see that naš ti is also followed with the complementation introduced by the complementizer te, so we may say here that it is actually the complementizer te that is omitted. So the aim of the study is to investigate complementizers in the Gurbet Romani variety spoken in Eastern Serbia. And today I will specifically focus on the question which linguistic and extra-linguistic factors influence complementizer omission in Gurbet Romani. This is actually a part of a larger study which is interested in the factors influencing complementizer drop, not only in Gurbet Romani, but also in the present Timok dialectal area. And part of the results regarding the Timok variety have already been published in the journal Balkania Eslavia. The corpus for the study is the Knjaževac Gurbet Romani corpus, which is compiled from the transcripts of conversations with native speakers from the town of Knjaževac, who are all bilingual in Gurbet Romani and Serbian. The corpus consists of approximately 16,000 word tokens, and here in this blue table you see that half of the sample belongs to the adults' speech and the other half to the children's speech. The corpus is manually annotated for word classes, including complementizers, and also for word origin. And I specifically searched for the instances of the use of the complementizers kai, te, and ke, and also of the use of the selecting verbs, so the matrix or main verbs in the main clause, which could select the complementation introduced with these complementizers in cases that these complementizers are not used. So I was interested also in the cases of omission. The overall number of the analyzed examples is 100 in the adult sample and 132 in the children's sample. Based on this corpus, a database is created of the complementizers, and this is still a work in progress because we need to add more examples and some additional annotation, as well as the translation of the examples into English, because currently only the translation into Serbian exists. So I will only briefly guide you through the annotation. So in addition to providing the examples, we annotated the citation Romani form, thank you, that is the third person singular of the present tense. We provide the information on whether the selecting or the main verb is in the affirmative or negative form in the column negation. The next column shows whether it is inflected or uninflected. Then we annotated the tense, person, and number of this selecting or the higher verb. The information on whether the complementizer is used and which complementizer is used. Then follow the tense, person, and number of the selecting verbs, in addition to the information whether the selecting verb and the lower verb are found in the immediate contact position, meaning whether there are any other words intervening between them or not. We also provide information on whether the subjects of the main clause and the complement clause are identical or not. The information on whether speakers belong to the age group of adults or children. And finally, the information on to which verb type the selecting verb belongs to. So I basically explained all of this. I will just point to this red part and explain that all the verbs, the selecting verbs, that is the main verbs, were divided into 3 categories. These would be modal verbs, for instance, can or be allowed to. Then the so-called light verbs, which would include verbs such as go, take, and sit. These light verbs mean actually that they do not have their exact semantic meaning and all of their semantic components, but they actually refer to a single event together with the lower complement verb, and all other verbs belong to the category other. So in the analysis, the dependent variable was complementizer, whether it is overt or omitted, and all these annotated previously mentioned features are taken into account as independent variables. So based on the database, we may establish that a clear distinction between verbs, the selecting verbs, in terms of which complementizer they actually select. So the selecting verbs are the verbs meaning hear, know, say, regret, think, announce. So they all belong to the category of cognitive, perceptive, or utterance verbs. The single case selecting verb is the verb to say, found only in 5 examples. And all other verbs are actually test selecting verbs. These include modal verbs, light verbs, and some other specific predicates such as to learn or to order or tell someone to do something. The general picture shows that the non-factual complementizer te is found only with modal and light verbs, and it is the only complementizer that can be omitted, which is something that we all know from the previous literature. It is specifically omitted from the complement clauses which are selected by the modal verbs mora, shai, and nashti, which are all uninflected, and also by the verbs jal and lel, which mean go and take. These are light verbs. In contrast, factual complementizers ka and ke are used with all other selecting verbs, and they are never omitted. In addition, it is important to mention that the overall rate of the complementizer omission in Gurbet Romani is around 18%, which means that complementizer omission in Gurbet Romani is possible, but it is not frequent. And it is also interesting to compare this rate of complementizer drop in Gurbet Romani with the rate that we obtained for the Timok variety, which is nearly the same, around 18%. And for the Timok variety, we included also similar modal verbs can, must, light verbs go and take, and also the aspectual verb begin. So there is some sort of interesting comparison between the complementizer omission in both the Timok variety and, thank you, also Gurbet Romani. Later, we may discuss, if you're interested, in some more examples, and I will just now walk you through some of the interesting quantitative analysis which shows under which specific morphosyntactic and semantic condition the complementizer actually gets omitted. First of all, the verb type. In all figures that you will see, the blue bars represent the complementizer omission, the red bars when the complementizer is used or overt. So verb type is significant, as we can see that only modal and light verbs allow for the complementizer drop. Inflection of the selecting or the higher verb is also significant, as the complementizer tends to be used more. This is the large red bar here. It is used more frequently with inflected selecting groups, and if we consider the group of modal verbs, only uninflected verbs actually allow for the complementizer omission. Contact position is also significant, as the complementizer is more frequently drop when the selecting and the complement verbs are in the immediate contact position, which means that there are no other words intervening between them. And it is interesting that in the Timok data, so the Serbian variety spoken in Eastern Serbia, we got the completely opposite effect because Serbian varieties employ, dialects employ the pronominal and reflexive clitics, which are basically found between the matrix and the complement verb, which influences more significant complementizer drop. The person of the selecting verb is also significant as the complementizer is more frequently omitted with the uninflected forms, especially compared to the first and third person. The number of the selecting verb is also significant as the complementizer is more frequently overt, this long red bar, when the verb is in the singular form. The independent subject is also very important as the complementizer drop occurs significantly more frequently when the subjects of the matrix and the complement clauses are the same, which actually means that the semantics here kind of maps onto the syntax because we have the obligatory control actually of the subject. And finally, the complementizer omission shows also a significant effect of age. The difference between adults and children is statistically significant as we observe that complementizer omission is found in 26% of the cases in the adult sample and only 12% of the cases in the children's sample. And also it should be mentioned that the use of the borrowed complementizer thank you is found only in children's sample and only after the verb meaning to say. So to discuss this, first the results show that there is a clear semantic distinction between the complementizers K and T in Gurbet Romani, which is something that we already knew from other varieties, studies on other varieties. Next, the complementizer drop is optional, infrequent, and it is more likely to occur under specific morphosyntactic and semantic conditions. And this may have the implications on the size of the clause structure of the complement clause in Gurbet Romani. For instance, we may adopt the approach which is built for the South Slavic languages by Wurmbrand and others. It is a formal generative approach which suggests that the modal complements have lower syntactic projections in comparison to the indicative complements. It remains a question to be further investigated if the use of the borrowed complementizer can be regarded as an indication of a potential ongoing language change. What I believe is that it certainly signals a more nuanced semantic specification of particular complementizers, given that K is only found after the selecting verb penel, which means to say. And it may be considered in the future whether this optional complementizer omission might actually develop later during the process of language acquisition in children. And to conclude, the obtained results align with previous research on Balkan complementizers and the distribution of Romani complementizers across this factual and non-factual domain. It remains to be established also, is there a language change which is driven by internal linguistic factors affected, for instance, by language contact with Serbian, because we see many, many parallels, and also by external sociolinguistic factors such as age, as this is what our results show. Thank you very much.
Dear Mirjana, thank you very much for perfect timing and very interesting talk. We have 5 minutes for questions and discussions. Dear friends and colleagues, online and offline, you're welcome. Андрей Николаевич, у вас точно есть что-то? Да. Давайте вы начнете, а потом, если кто-то захочет, еще спросит.
Дорогая Мира, встретился. Радуемся, да ты видим, радуемся, что же видим.
Mogu oba. Both are possible according to.
A to mi uvek bila zagrobnjaka da li ispravno kažem. Thank you for a brilliant presentation of the complex situation in the Romani dialects, specifically in that of Kняževac. My question, I have a commentary. It's on the feeling that generative approach experiences a kind of revival in this very last months and last years, giving more attention to the facts of dialectology. And I would like to stress that it is important that this paradigm develops using dialectal data as well, not just the data of standard languages. And your paper shows clearly how this is possible. Then, my question would address the issue of dropping the complementizer with modal predicates. Dropping means this structure can be used without any complementizer, where there is zero complementizer. My question is that if complementizer has non-factual semantics, where does it go? Where does the semantics go when the complementizer is lost?
Okay, thank you. Yes, first of all, some of the literature, especially on Romani language, like the paper I cited by Matras and Tensor in 2016, they insist on not calling this the drop, but actually the absence or presence of the complementizer, which would assume that the structures that we are dealing with do not necessarily originate with the complementizer. However, since we see in Romani, but also, for instance, in the Timok variety, the same selecting verbs with the optionality of the complementizer drop, that is with complementizers or without the complementizers, I believe that the complementizers are initially there. I'm not sure whether they serve the, currently I'm not sure whether they serve only the semantic function. I believe that they here actually introduce clauses and signal the size of the clauses, and that their omission, especially since we know for Romani that the complementizer drops only if it's modal, I would say that it actually signals that the complement clause that follows the selecting verb is syntactically different, of a different type, or allows for different kind of projections in comparison to the complement clauses introduced, for instance, by the verbs meaning no, say, here, and so on. So this is not about Romani because there's not much data on this, on Romani, especially not from the formal perspective. Some studies on South Slavic languages, standard languages or dialects show actually that in these projections, the node which DA introduces contains some smaller portion of semantics in terms of whether it introduces modal meaning or not, or the future tense, for instance, is also investigated here. But I would just say for the time being that maybe we need to do more analysis to actually prove this, that there is some semantics in DA. Or in Dains, or in Te, in Romani.
We have a possibility.
Thank you for your comment.
We have a possibility for one more comment and question. Iliyana, please.
Yes. Mirjana, thank you very much for this extremely rich and interesting talk. I would like to mention that Andrei Sobolev was the first to notice that complementizer drop is possible in some dialects in Eastern Serbia. So you are actually expanding. So all the work that followed this observation of his actually is extremely important. My question is about the difference between factive and factual. So factual, according to you, are the declarative complementizers, but they do not introduce facts. They introduce new information that can be disputed. So maybe factual, although it is quite well spread in the literature, may not be the right term to make the difference between what is considered to be new information and what is considered to be a fact. And I was particularly interested by your distinction between kai and ke. So you showed that there is further division of labor between some verbs that select kai and some verb like communication that select ke. So this is extremely interesting from point of view of complementation theory. If you can comment on this briefly.
Yes. But first of all, there is a little bit of, I would say, mixture on what we consider factive and factual. Sometimes it is even mixed in the literature. Other propositions are that for the factual that I used, we can use propositional as a term, and for the non-factual, we can also use state of affairs. So the distinction is whether the complement clause is indicative or whether it belongs to the irrealis or hypothetical situation. So that would be the difference. And I've also checked, given that I knew that you will discuss the factive predicates, I've also checked, for instance, in Romani, kai is used with factive. With regret, for instance, or be aware, doubt, or these kind of things. So kai is always employed. So te is preserved in all Romani varieties and also in Gurbet Romani, and it belongs to this domain of modal complementation. And we introduced now also the light verbs, which also further need more examples and analysis. Thank you for your comment.
Yes. One short comment from Андрей Николаевич.
Да, простите, коллеги, из любви к фактам. Все-таки тема опущения в сложных предикатах с модальными глаголами затрагивалась южнославянской диалектологией давно, в течение 100 лет. Очень хороший обзор есть в книге Геннадия Афанасьевича Цехуна «Типологические проблемы балканославянского ареала». Целая глава посвящена этому феномену с очень хорошими контекстами, разнообразными. Спасибо.
Let's thank once again Mirjana for a very interesting talk.
Спасибо.
Thank you. And now we have a talk by Ekaterina Tarpomanova, Barem, a Balkan restrictive particle. Yes, we see your presentation.
Dear colleagues, thank you. First, I would like to thank the organizers of this wonderful event to give us the possibility to honor the anniversary of our respected colleague, Андрей Соболев. Андрей, ще се обърна към вас на български, понеже не знам как превладеете и нашия език. Честит юбилей! Сърдечни поздрави от мен и моите колеги от Софийския университет, които ви познават, и пожелания за здраве и вдъхновения в науката и научни постижения. Now my talk is about a Balkan restrictive particle, namely Barem. So after Complementizers, we will go to discourse markers. Now, of course, when we talk about the Balkan Sprachbund, after the introduction of the term of Sprachbund by Trubetskoy, the similarity in morphosyntax of the Balkan languages, of course, have been the primary object of research. And many of the generalizing works in modern Balkan linguistics deal with precisely morphosyntactic features. However, many studies also pay attention to the common vocabulary as it's a marker of centuries of language contact between Balkan languages. Studies are focused on different features of the common Balkan vocabulary. Just a few of them to mention. Petya Senova, for example, analyzes substrate vocabulary, common phraseological units, isosemy, and common word formation models. Shaban Demire describes borrowings from Greek, Latin, Slavic, and Turkish in the Balkan languages, focusing on their transmission in Albanian. And one of the last recent researches by Victor Friedman and Brian Joseph, they analyze in their book Linguistics borrowed content, words and suffixes, emphasizing on the so-called ERIC words, or essentially rooted in conversation loans, in which they include kinship terms, numerals, loans with grammatical value, and also discourse elements. Now, Andrei Sobolev argues for aerial approach to Balkan vocabulary because it's useful for both historical and typological study of Balkan languages. Balkan discourse markers are a special category of words. They have different origin, most often Turkish origin, and they are words that function as discourse markers. As I mentioned, Friedman and Joseph include them in the ERIC loans, while in the dictionary of the Common Balkan Lexicon in the standard languages, Asenova and Detres include them as a part of the relations of humans with themselves and with the world, together with words denoting social interaction, behavior, qualities, and so on. So discourse markers are not just common lexemes borrowed from one language into others, but they have important functions in text organization and communication. So two of them can be described as focus particles. Barem, the word I am presenting today, bash, which is another kind of focus particle, I will mention it in a second, and partially makar, at least in Romanian. So what are focus particles? They're operators on the semantic structure of a sentence that determine the contrast focus, or one of a set of alternatives in a given situation. What is the interaction between focus particles and sentence focus? So according to Koenig's theory, given in his book, The Meaning of Focus Particles, sentences with focus particles entail the corresponding sentences without the particles. In those sentences, focus particles contribute quantificational force to the meaning of a sentence because they quantify a set of alternatives. And finally, they can include or exclude these alternatives as possible values for the relevant sentence. And according to the last hypothesis, focus particles are two main subtypes, inclusive or additive and exclusive or restrictive particles. So the inclusive or the additive particles, they include or add some alternatives as possible values. For instance, also, to, even, in particular in English. While exclusive or restrictive particles imply that none of the alternatives satisfies the relevant sentence. So restrictive particles are particles like only and at least in English. And there is one third type of particles besides those two main types, particles for emphatic assertion of a property, like exactly and precisely in English. And here we can classify our other focus particles, particle bash. But Barem the particle I will talk about is a restrictive particle. So the meaning of restrictive particles can be defined by using a negative existential quantifier, nobody or nothing other than. So in a sentence, only Fred bought a new car, we can replace only by nobody other than Fred bought a new car. Now let's see the subtypes of restrictive particles. Like unlike restrictive particles of the type only, which specify the exact scope of the indicated value of the alternative, the particles of the type at least indicate the lowest satisfactory value from the viewpoint of the speaker. Now, linguists agree that there are two meanings of the particles of the type of at least. The first one is the epistemic meaning, which is related to the speaker's knowledge about the situation, and the second meaning is the evaluative meaning, which is related to the speaker's subjective assessment of the situation. And if we take a look at the examples, into A, Mary won at least a silver medal. Here the speaker is uncertain about what medal Mary won. So it's the epistemic meaning of the particle. And then into B, at least Mary won a silver medal. This is the evaluative meaning because although winning a silver medal is less preferred than winning a gold medal, it's satisfactory. So it's better than no medal or bronze medal. So we can put alternatives on scale when using particles of the type at least. And in this scale, the alternative is low, but okay. Thank you. Satisfactory. Now, Barem has the meaning of at least. It occurs in almost all Balkan languages in several varieties, usually in several phonetic varieties, like in Turkish, bare, bari, or barim, in Bulgarian and Macedonian, barem or barem with change of the accent, barim or barim with a variation e, or without this final m, bare, bari, and the shortest version bar. Now, in Bosnian, Croatian, Montenegrin, and Serbian, over 20 dialectal variants are registered with different accents and with different endings. In Albanian, several varieties. In Romanian and also in Aromanian and Megleno-Romanian. In Greek, there are many dialectal varieties again, and then the word is found in Giudesmo and in Romani. The only Balkan language, like a language of the Balkan Peninsula, where Barem is not registered, it is not loaned, it's Slovenian. So some synonyms according to dictionaries in different languages. In Bulgarian, pone is the neutral synonym. In Romanian, cel puțin or makar, the pacton. In Albanian, lahiston in Greek. So linguists agree about the origin of Barem in all the Balkan languages in which it occurs. It is loaned from Turkish, and in Turkish, in Ottoman Turkish, in fact, it is borrowed from Persian. Now, in Persian, bari is a compound comprising a component one, with literal meaning one time, and then as adverb, it means at least two. But there is one alternative hypothesis proposed by the Bulgarian linguist Mladenov and also adopted by the Bulgarian etymological dictionary for domestic Slavic origin. So according to the Mladenov and the etymological dictionary of Bulgarian, Barem, Barim are parallel to the form Baže, Bažim of the adverb Božem, which comes from Bo and Je in Old Church Slavonic, and they make the analogy with Duri and Daže in Bulgarian. However, this hypothesis cannot explain the common form and meaning of the word in the Balkan languages. So, usually the hypothesis of Turkish alone is accepted. Now, in Bulgarian, Romanian, and Greek, the use of barem is defined as colloquial or a vernacular. So it is a word of very low register when used in colloquial speech, or it sounds dialectal. In modern Albanian, it's obsolete, and finally, it is not used at all. It's not even recognized by native speakers of my age, for instance. They don't know what barem means at all. It's still found in Albanian and Kosovo, Macedonia, most likely preserved under the influence of Serbian and Macedonian. Thank you. But on the other hand, it's in active use in Serbo-Croatian and Macedonian, in which it has replaced the domestic restrictive particles. Some examples of use in Bulgarian, barem мастиката да си изпием до край началство. In Romanian, stai barem mai mult. In Greek, δεν κάνανε barem και εδώ ένα σταυρό. In Albanian, this is an example I found in Facebook. The user is from Kosovo, so it's Kosovo, Albanian of Kosovo. Tur pasne li Bernudin, suai bare Heidi and Clara, say Heidi and Clara. And another example in Albanian, from Macedonian, Albanian this time, ne edim se nuk munden barem tamos. At least they shouldn't promise. In Serbian, 11 na Mirnica, koja treba da jesti bar jednom sedmično, and in Macedonian, vo životu odsakam barem ednaš da ja posetim Amerika. Now, in Bulgarian, Romanian, and Greek colloquial speech, barem is expressive compared to the neutral synonym words I mentioned, and this motivates the prevailing use of the particle with its evaluative meaning. So I didn't find at all occurrence in corpora or in internet of barem like an epistemic particle. On the other hand, in Serbo-Croatian and Macedonian, both evaluative and epistemic values are possible, like in Serbian, obe traje bar jedan sat, of what I know. Okay. I skipped entirely the syntax of barem, which is very interesting, but I will leave it for other time to show you some numbers. Now, in national corpora of Albanian, Greek, Bulgarian, and Romanian, barem is not a very frequent word. There is one occurrence in the Albanian national corpus in a novel by Jakov Dzodza, and in the corpus of spoken Albanian of Kosovo, it is not found at all. In the corpus of modern Greek, It has 8 occurrences only in literature, in novels, and Papadiamandis, for instance, is known as an author that uses Barem. In the Bulgarian national corpus, you can see the numbers: 400 for Barem, 40 for Bare, and 20 for Barem. And in Romanian, a little bit more than 1,000 occurrences. But another corpus that gives us the possibility to make a comparison between South Slavic languages in the Balkans are the Klasla web corpora of South Slavic languages. And you can see the numbers of occurrences of Barem and Bar with different distribution in Croatian and Serbian. Like in Croatian, Barem is preferred, while in Serbian it is Bar, which is mostly used. But as compared with Bulgarian, where pone is the most frequent restrictive particle, this type, the differences are obvious. So to conclude, the discourse marker Barem is a Turkish loanword spread throughout the Balkans without Slovenian, with the only exception Slovenian, but with attenuating functions in modern Balkan languages in which frequent restrictive markers are domestic words. The situation in Bulgarian, Albanian, Romanian, and Greek contrasts with Serbo-Croatian, in which the loanword became a basic word. And in this respect, Macedonian is closer to Bosnian, Croatian, Montenegrin, and Serbian than to Bulgarian and the Balkan languages on the other hand. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a very interesting talk. We have a couple of minutes for short questions or short comments. So, please, dear colleagues. Андрей Николаевич, давайте вы. Остальные подтянутся, если захотите. Да.
Что потом, коллеги, это выступит все-таки, да? Мы будем надеяться. Александр сам смотрит на меня. Я испытываю желание выступить. Дорогая Екатерина, благодарю вас за замечательный доклад. По-русски, конечно, расскажу. Мы владеем языками друг друга.
Точно.
Удовольствие. Замечательный доклад, выдержанный в духе классической балканистики, как она сформировалась и развивается в Болгарии. И очень радует всегда видеть доклады и сообщения, выдержанные в разных научных парадигмах. Это обогащает нашу дисциплину, которая по определению полифонична. Вот она и в этом отношении полифонична. Есть очень маленький вопрос, косвенно относящийся к теме. Вот в албанском языке все-таки основным средством выражения этого рестриктивного или ограничительного значения будет сепактум, да, или как сепактум. И вот мотивирует этот союз все-таки симантема мало. Ну и в русском языке тоже по меньшей мере. И вроде бы в балканославянских тоже языках, можно сказать, наймалку с таким ограничительным значением. Вот мы видим на этом примере, как сосуществуют семантические параллели, с одной стороны, с прямыми заимствованиями, например, из турецкого. И вот какова ваша гипотеза относительно выбора албанского языка в пользу вот этого типа? Почему? Вроде бы этот язык пронизан турецкими, тюркскими заимствованиями, и вот в этом сегменте он пошел другим путем. Спасибо.
Thank you for this question. It's really kind of strange that exactly Albanian didn't choose the Turkish loanword, but this is made in like South Slavic languages, except Bulgarian. I really don't have an answer to this, and this will require a diachronical study of course, but it will be also interesting to look at Serbian and Croatian and all the languages of all the varieties there, Bosnian and Montenegrin, to why did they prefer Barem when they had a domestic word. It will be an interesting question, and probably here the aerial approach would help because we can also see what is the dialectal distribution of the word in the Balkan languages. So that would be something that then can be studied.
Dear Ekaterina, thank you very much once again for a very interesting talk. I'm sorry to stop this discussion. Let's thank Ekaterina once again.